Welcome, everyone. We're so excited that you're joining us today for this live event with my dad, Dr. Fuhrman. Be sure to write in the chat which trend you want us to myth bust. But we have a long list of questions that people submitted in advance, so I'm really excited to talk about those and clear up the confusion so everyone can focus on the healthiest lifestyle and choices for them. So, to introduce Dr. Fuhrman, he is a medical doctor, nutritional researcher, and my co-host on the Eat to Live podcast. We have an exciting event coming up May 5th. That's the weight loss detox. So if you want to engage and work with him directly, that's your time this May. So it's coming up in just a few weeks. But today we are going to talk about Dr. Fuhrman is going to educate us on the popular health trends and TikTok nutrition advice. So all that stuff you see on the internet, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, hopefully we're going to clear up a lot of that confusion. What do you say, Dad? You ready?
I'm always ready.
I know. I was talking to you about this before and you said, just ask me questions. I don't need to prep. So let's see
Yeah.
what you got for us.
I'm always I can I'm always ready, and I don't get tired, and I can do it in the middle of the night. I can just do this anytime, day or night. I always love doing this stuff.
Cool. So to start it off, I'm going to talk about a very popular topic, and I feel like I see it everywhere, and it's fat burning supplements. Not just fat burning supplements, but supplements in general. I feel like I see them for creatine now. I see a lot of influencers talk about balancing their hormones. So can you just talk to us a little bit about fat burning supplements, like, and even medication like Ozempic, and if they actually work or what are the risks?
Well, nothing takes the place of personal responsibility and correct health habits. And that means eating carefully, not eating till you're full, eating a wide variety of plant materials, get a wide variety of fiber, preventing your body from building up metabolic waste and toxic waste from the external environment, and getting enough sleep, and also having good emotions that you're not under chronic stress. In other words, they're looking for magic and they're looking for remedies instead of establishing the foundation of good health. And the remedies lead to more poor health because let's say, just for example, you're getting 6 hours of sleep a night and you need 7.5 hours of sleep. You could feel fine with 6 hours. You just drink coffee 3 times a day to get your energy back up. Just take extra creatine to get you feel a little more power. But what you really needed that's not going to be good for your life to try to cover up the fact that you needed an extra hour and a half of sleep each night. So what you really need to do is same thing with good nutrition. When people are fatigued, they're fatigued because their body has too much metabolic wastes. And when wastes circulate in the bloodstream, people feel wiped out and fatigued. So it's and we could stop the circulation of waste by giving more food or giving more supplements. So people look for symptomatic relief, which then leads for them to pay less attention to cause. And because the American diet is such a dirty diet, it really is dirty in that it produces a huge amount of metabolic waste, that the people are always going to feel fatigued when they stop stimulating themselves with. So it's a whole different way of looking at the world and looking at the way the body works that leads people in this remedy mentality that the medical profession reinforces by you have high blood pressure, you take a remedy. You get folic acid defects, you have neural tube defects, you take a little folic acid pill during pregnancy, which is synthetic, it's a remedy. It's all you have diabetes. It's never establishing what the cause of the problem is, which always leads to better long-term results. And people confuse short-term feeling better for long-term health, for long-term benefits. And they're confusing because what makes you feel better in the short run can be very detrimental to your long-term health. So it's very confusing for people because they don't understand how the way the body works. And we'll go over that feeling better in the short run is not what we're looking for. It's feeling better in the long, it's living longer and aging slower, what we're looking for. And that requires sometimes us to feel worse in the short run. But we can talk about that and explain that more. But we can put that in context with the question you asked me about fat burning, energy, and hormone balancing, and creatine, and what you asked me more about Ozempic and trying to speed up weight loss. And the point is, you don't get something for nothing. You pay a price for every time you try to trick the body. So drugs don't work because they're nutritive. They're nutritive. They work because they're toxic or poisonous. So they block some natural body receptor. And the poison you take to block that receptor comes with some price. You never get it without a price. And so Ozempic causes, on the average, 8 to 10% of weight loss. If you're 100 pounds overweight and you're losing 10% of that, then you're losing maybe 15 pounds and you're still 85 pounds overweight. And then the minute you stop the Ozempic, you gain the weight back. And you didn't learn how to deal and get the other 80 pounds off your body. And if you learned how to get the other 80 pounds off your body, then you wouldn't have needed the Ozempic. And plus the fact that we don't know the long-term health risks of Ozempic or any of those medications. Every drug in the history of medicine has resulted in a cumulative pile of negative side effects that shown themselves after 10 years after the drug was or more. Look at Nexium, the #1 proton pump inhibitor for people with reflux. Now it has a black box warning to show people it causes increased risk of heart attacks that we didn't know the first 5 years it was out there in the market. So the point is that they don't result in they reinforce a person's reliance on fads, gimmicks, and tricks and drugs instead of taking personal responsibility by learning how to eat a salad and vegetable bean soup and exercise every day and get enough sleep. So people really, it's just demonstrative of how backwards the medical profession is and their lack of ability to motivate and to educate the population to stop this obesity epidemic and this cancer epidemic that the medical doctors have contributed to.
So it seems like you're saying these fat burning supplements and even drugs like Ozempic are more harmful than helpful. Because I know you've said a lot too, yo-yo dieting is more dangerous than even losing the weight at all. You want to lose the weight and keep it off forever. You don't want a yo-yo diet.
That's true. Keep in mind, over 50% of people on Ozempic quit the medication within the first year of use. That means if they quit the medication, the weight comes back. And the weight comes back usually faster than they originally gained the weight. And when the weight comes back faster, the fat is stored more visceral and it becomes more saturated. And more visceral fat and more saturated fat produces higher levels of cholesterol and creates more insulin resistance, so it ages them faster. So starting and stopping weight loss, losing and gaining weight again, particularly when you use drugs, is not helpful to your long-term survival and actually accelerates the aging process. And so you're talking about staying on a medication long-term for a little bit of benefit, or it's taking it for a while and stopping it. And you say, oh, I'm going to just take it for a little while to kickstart till I can get my diet right. But drugs don't work that way. People don't learn how to do it right. They don't learn how to get rid of their addiction, their cravings. The only way you get rid of addictions and cravings, so you can continue the weight loss past the initial 10 or 15 pounds you're losing, is by repetition and practice in abstaining from these toxic foods that stimulate the brain, the dopamine centers in the brain. And these foods that have a high caloric rush of calories, like fried foods and oils and sugar and honey. And in other words, anything that has it's called the glycemic load is how fast the sugar enters the bloodstream. And the lipemic load is how fast the fat enters the bloodstream. And when you have these huge amounts of calories entering the bloodstream, it affects the dopamine centers in the brain, the same areas that are overly stimulated by opiates. And then people become dopamine insensitive and they develop cravings for a rush of calories. So they have a salad and some vegetables or some soup and some fruit with lunch, and they're not satisfied. There was no caloric rush. They got to have some ice cream, a pizza, a burger, some chips. They have to have something that creates a caloric rush because it's not going to be brain stimulating. And they're not going to ever get rid of those cravings unless they restructure the wiring of the brain, which means you have to abstain from smoking for many months to rewire the brain. You have to abstain from sugar and oils and fried food and fast foods and commercial baked goods for many months to rewire the brain so you stop craving them. And so these drugs don't make people stop their cravings. They just make them so they're trying to change the wiring a little bit, and so you're still fighting yourself. You're never really going to learn how to do this unless you really train yourself. And training in any sport, any endeavor takes practice and repetition and time to do it right over and over again. Then your body adapts to that.
starting my morning with complete greens. I'm really proud. I actually had this question written down, which is what you're starting to talk about. You often say that most diets are set up to fail. So can you explain more about why that is and what it does to the brain?
The whole dieting mentality is set up to fail because it usually means some kind of trick or gimmick to lose weight temporarily, to speed up your weight loss temporarily. And I'm saying that it has to be when we focus on longevity and not on just a quick weight loss, we're trying to eat more healthy, longevity promoting foods. And ultimately, our lifespan is resulted of our ability protection against cancer is the amount and the diversity of phytonutrients from plants in our cells because the plant phytonutrients supply antioxidants and phytochemicals that suppress cancer growth in a cell and suppress abnormal growth and protect the DNA. So nature put into plant material and put colorful nutrients in there that protect human cells against damage. And cancer essentially is a phytonutrient deficiency disease. But so we're talking here that a diet means that we're going to take the American diet, what people like to eat, which is processed foods, which don't have protective chemicals, and animal products, which don't have protective chemicals, because people are eating only 2% of calories from vegetables in America today. And in some way, we're going to trick the body into losing weight by cutting back on food, which which leads to more nutritional deficiencies, okay, measuring portions and eating smaller portions. We need to eat larger portions of in order to maintain weight loss and keep ourselves thin, slim, and healthy the rest of our life. We need to eat larger portions of high nutrient food that are naturally low in calories and chew them real well. Again, the point, we keep going back to that point, is nutritional concentration in the cell and lack of toxic waste products in the cell. And the waste products we're talking about are endogenous waste produced by the body, like free radicals and urea and ammonia and formaldehyde. The body produces its own wastes that age us. And then there's external waste, smoke and chemicals and that we can get and that mixture of waste products build up in the cells. And of course, we're trying not to expose ourselves to externally generated waste. But the only way you can get plastics, but the only way you can get that stuff out of the cell is by eating high nutrient foods that enables cell repair mechanisms and cell detoxification mechanisms. And those nutrients are found in things that we talk about that prevent cancer, that help detoxify cells, are things like spinach and lettuce and arugula and sprouts and onions and mushrooms and flax seeds and sesame seeds. All these things have all these different ingredients that enable the body to fix the cell damage. And then of course, people are chronically fatigued all the time because they have so little nutrients in the cells and so much toxic waste in the cells that their body is always in a detox mode, pushing poisons out in the blood, and they feel wiped out all the time.
So piggybacking off that, this question is more centered around hormones. So can hormones be a problem and why someone feels tired, bad skin? You'll see on the internet a lot, they say, I found out my hormones were off balance and I found, I'm taking this supplement or I switched to doing this and it regulates my hormones. Can that contribute to weight gain? And is there a way that food can balance it?
Well, there are three hormones that increase your risk of cancer. And those are predominantly insulin, estrogen, and insulin-like growth factor 1. Those are the three main hormones that are necessary ingredients to create the most common cancers, particularly breast and prostate cancer. Focusing on breast cancer for a minute, the American diet causes an incredibly high level of estrogen that's cancer promoting. And so we're taking foods that block estrogen stimulation of the breast, like flax seeds and mushrooms and soybeans, block and reduce risk of breast cancer accordingly. So saying you're going to balance hormones is saying to people, the estrogen testosterone ratio was off because body fat produces estrogen and eating fatty foods and animal products produce extra estrogen. And of course, the animal products produce more IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. Excess animal protein produces more IGF-1. Excess sugar in the blood creates excess insulin. But the biggest source of extra estrogen is fat on the body. It means overeating food and eating too much of everything. And body fat is the primary producer of increased estrogen. So now we have people with extra hormones, which makes their estrogen, testosterone, and estrogen progesterone ratio unbalanced. So now you have doctors and alternative health practitioners trying to balance people's hormones by giving them more testosterone or progesterone to make the estrogen, progesterone, and estrogen testosterone ratio more favorable. But that's not the way that's going to lead to longer lifespan. That is a formula for even for premature death and cancer. What we really want to balance hormones is by lowering estrogen to bring it closer to, and raising testosterone and lowering estrogen by losing body fat. So let's go. People, they don't want to get to the truth. The doctors don't want to insult people. They don't want to make people feel bad. They don't want to tell them they have to change their diet and start exercising more. They just gives them pills and remedies instead of saying the facts that there's no such thing as a healthy overweight person. You can't have normal hormones when you're overweight, and you can't have normal hormones when you overeat. It's impossible. Overeating drives excess hormones. And the only way to keep your hormones balanced is by keeping your fat off your body and being strong. In other words, I get more testosterone, lower estrogen by lifting weights and eating less. So by keeping our body lean, and that means that a woman's body fat to have a normal estrogen balance has to be below 25% body fat. And for a male to have the testosterone estrogen balance be favorable, the body fat has to be below 15%. If you're not getting low body fat, then you are in trouble, and you can't fix it by taking hormones from a doctor.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, but I see it a lot on social media. And the second a doctor or nutritional advocate or influencer starts talking about, I took this to balance my hormones, I stop listening because I'm like, you do not understand science or the human body.
Right. Balance your hormones. That's like the people saying adrenal fatigue, and they have these catchwords and these even fake diagnoses that mean nothing. It's like immediately it's right. It's a light goes off. You're balancing your hormones. God, what do you think your perfect weight should be? What's the most optimal weight for you? Because you've got to be the scientist of your own body. You've got to be the artist of your own body, and got to know what to eat and how much to eat to be the best version of yourself. And stop going to doctors and checking your blood pressure and getting pills until you've achieved. You got to get the best version. Of course, if you're not the best version of yourself, of course, if you're overweight, eating the wrong foods, you're going to discombobulate everything. Your blood pressure is going to go up, and your glucose is going to go up, and your hormones are going to go off, and you're fatigued all the time, and your headaches all the time, and you can't breathe when of course, everything's wrong if you're not going to eat right and exercise right and sleep right. Right? You can't be healthy unless you do the right things to be healthy.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what you always say, and this is almost always the answer. Nutrition is the prescription. If you do not have good nutrition, you will never have good health or your ideal body weight.
And that we can't get health without a high consumption of green vegetables. Instead of taking, in other words, the body is green vegetable dependent, and you can't have a normal immune system, and you can't detoxify toxins without a high intake of green vegetables. So if you're not a green vegetable eater and you don't want to eat enough green vegetables, and that means eating enough of them raw and cooked, but most of them raw, you got to live close to a hospital or be in touch with your doctors and taking pills and remedies all the time. Keep in mind, I'm saying that the natural remedies, the herbalist, the Chinese medicine doctor, the naturopath is giving you, the natural substances have efficacy in proportion to their toxicity. And the pharmaceutical drugs are made from the same natural substances. They're made synthetic versions of them to have medicinal effects. So it's not that natural treatments don't work. It's just they work because they're poisonous. And we should live in a manner to avoid the need for medicinal substances. We don't want to have more practitioners giving us more remedies. We want to live in a manner so we don't need remedies.
Okay, so we're gonna get into all those questions about protein and low carb diets soon. But I just wanted to follow up because we got one more supplement question asked a lot, very frequently. And it is, what about supplemental ingredients that can help lower blood pressure or fix glucose levels, like amla and some of these? There was a lot of different stuff asked. I know amla was one, and then we have berberine.
Berberine, yeah.
And then there was one other ingredient that.
Well, we sell supplements that has those ingredients in them for people lowering their glucose, their cholesterol. Our LDL Protect has amla in it for lowering cholesterol and lowers glucose too. So these things, but we're not telling people to be reliant on these supplements to lower their glucose or their cholesterol. We're telling them to get their weight off and eat healthy because that's going to do 90% of the work. And sure, the supplements can add a little bit of extra for people who have a genetic hindrance or for people who aren't on a healthy diet, but in no way am I suggesting that the supplement is better than the diet change. It's the
Is that
diet
supplement?
change. Yeah, it's a supplement. The diet's much. So there are things we can take that help. And we can name a few of them. Curcumin from turmeric, green tea extract is supplementally is very good. Mushroom extracts are excellent. Amla is an excellent supplement. All these things that you can take that are plant materials that supply these flavonoids, more flavonoids, have some mild beneficial effects. And we can add them to sprinkle a little extra help onto the diet. But if you're not going to do the diet, the stuff is meaningless if you're not going to improve your health, lose the weight, and get in good shape, you know. And then once you do that, then you need those things less, and maybe not at all. So I'm not taking the AMLA product myself because my diet's too good. I wouldn't need it. But would I give it to my patients who are overweight and have a little high blood pressure, glucose, and a little bit of cholesterol problems? Yeah, I give them some AMLA, but I also give them the diet. And if they did the diet really good and lost all the weight, they wouldn't need the supplement anymore.
Bergamot is that other ingredient that was
Yeah,
talked about.
right. Yeah. So not that those, so some of those things are just phytonutrients, like you can imagine, EGCG from green tea and turmeric and the curcumins from turmeric are excellent things to supplement with, so is amla. But of course, our emphasis is on getting your lifestyle right, not on the supplements.
Okay, you ready for this heavy hitter?
Yes.
Can you really reverse aging and chronic conditions with food?
You know, I'll have to say yes, and I'll tell you why. I scientifically prove it every month. In other words, we can do a test and what's that test called? I think True Age. Yeah, the company is called True Age. They have like a $350 blood test. Well, we paid about $300 for it because we bought a whole bunch of them for a research study we did. We tested 350 women eating a nutritarian diet, and we test their biological aging markers, their telomere lengths, and the epigenetic changes and epigenetic defects and methylation defects in the DNA, and we had all these markers of aging. And so we compared them to women eating a standard American diet, and we found that their aging markers it showed that they're aging slow when they had a younger biological age. Now the thing is, I have people that come to see me, and they stay with us for a few months, and I can check their aging markers, their telomere length, and their skin nutritional scores, and their epigenetic changes, and I can check their levels again 3 months later after they followed the diet and lost 40 to 50 pounds, and we saw that they actually now have a younger biological age. So people could laugh and they could point fingers and they could say you can't age backwards, but I'm saying that when people switch from unhealthy eating to healthy eating, and they really do this for a longer period of time, we see the markers of biological aging and the markers of cancer and the markers of inflammation change. Just like a person can get rid of their diabetes and their cholesterol can drop and their body weight can drop and their inflammatory markers like the HSCRP can go back to. People are bringing themselves back to normal. They're actually achieving a slower aging, and in some cases, we can see they're actually achieved a lower biological age. So yes, we can't stop aging forever. We can't long-term reverse aging, but we can change a person's health practices. So for that period of time, they're actually aging backwards because they're getting in better health and to a younger biological age to the way they were when they were more unhealthy. You know what I mean? So yes, and so we're not going to stop aging and stop death, but we're going to age as slow as we possibly can so we can live longer and have our full physical and mental faculties when we get older to use them.
Which I always kind of feel that's what nature intended. We were never supposed to rapidly age, but with all the processed food and environmental toxins, it's been accelerated.
That's right. My 40 years or so of medical practice has demonstrated that that we should be able to live to 100 years old with excellent physical, emotional, and mental health. You know, and I know all these elderly people who mess up the mental health, and they're older, but they don't have any. They're demented or they have some other diseases. Look at my mother. She's 97 and she drives the car and has a full mental faculties. And she didn't follow a nutritarian diet that good. She just did better than most people, but she took the supplements. She stayed on to last maybe 8 years from 88 to 97, she's done a much better job. Now she's really on it, but still, at least she has her mental faculties intact. What's the point of being older if if you're, lost your memory and you can't be, and you're not feeling good and can't enjoy your life, you know? So she's 97 and still enjoying her life, you know?
Sharp as a whip, that one.
Yeah.
Go, grandma.
She likes to play games and play cards, and she still played golf, and she drives around and she does whatever she wants to do, at 97.
I know my friends are always shocked when I tell them that my 97-year-old grandma drives, but safely. Like she's no issue, absolutely no issue, which is amazing. Okay, so moving on
Well, I'm
to,
saying that the patients I've seen over decades, where I've seen people in their 70s and 80s sickly, I've seen those patients of mine and the people I got to know who followed the recommendations I told them to follow and were compliant with healthy lifestyle. I've seen them get rid of their high blood pressure, get rid of their heart disease, and live in their late 90s to to around 100 years old. So I'm seeing it happen. And I'm seeing people living longer and keeping that this is really working.
and if you're out there right now saying, can nutrition or Dr. Fuhrman help my blank condition, whatever it is, internal cystitis, I see people writing in, heart disease, cancer, the answer is almost always yes.
Interstitial cystitis, you mean? You said internal cystitis, but that's okay.
Interstitial, yeah.
Interstitial cystitis, yeah. Okay.
I see. Thank you. But just like whatever your health condition is, I just think it's so funny that the answer is almost always yes. I don't think I've ever heard you say no when someone brings up their health condition.
And it's so easy to get advice from me because I spend a few hours every single day answering questions on the website for people who post the questions as a member of drfuhrman.com. And I know it sounds like a plug, but I enjoy answering people's questions and helping them with their health issues so they don't have to spend thousands of dollars and going to doctors that are going to give them drugs and the wrong information anyway. So I give them some advice, and sometimes I'm telling them to, check this with your doctor, or ask your doctor this, or you're better if you started this way. So at least they have that extra consultant to ask my opinion on what they're doing. If what they're doing is right, they can always ask me through the Dr. Fuhrman website if they need that extra kind of support.
Yeah, so many programs. And I'm encouraging everyone to join the weight loss detox in May too, because they get the live sessions with you. They can write in and have you answer their questions. And we're all doing the same meal plan to lose weight and feel better in 20 days together. So that's a fun program that I know you always do too. And it's coming up, and we only offer it twice a year.
And we call it detox. It's a weight loss challenge because this is what makes people be able to crave less food and be comfortable eating the right amount of calories, is getting the nutrient levels up in the tissues, getting the toxins out, and then your body instinctually gets closer to be able to desiring the right food and not craving and wanting to overeat all the time. So once we can spend that time cleaning up people's body and get them acclimating the right foods, we can show that can help them stay on the plan long term and lead to long-term compliance with healthier eating for the rest of their life.
Right, but it's about building those habits for the rest of your life.
You got to build the habits. If you don't do it, there's nothing works like enforced abstinence from your bad habits. Nothing. You want to get off alcohol, you got to stay away from alcohol. You want to get off cigarettes, somebody has to force you to keep cigarettes away from you. You have to help, you need help. But in other words, that's the thing. If you keep lighting the fire by keep eating stuff you shouldn't be eating, it just makes you keep wanting it more and keep craving it more.
I just want to clear up before we wrap up the supplements conversation. I just want to clear up one last question that I think is important to clarify. Someone said they're confused because you're saying you don't recommend supplements, but at the same time, you're saying that you need them or you sell them.
Yes, we supplement conservatively. There are certain supplements I think are smart to take, especially when we advocate a plant-based diet or a diet that's either vegan or close to vegan or near, or eating either no animal products or very little animal products. And that diminishes your absorption of B12, zinc, iodine too, possibly, DHA and EPA, right? And sometimes vitamin D, which is the sunshine vitamin. So yes, we're making sure that you can get more zinc absorption if you ate more clams and oysters, and you can get more, even from seafood, more zinc. But we don't want people to eat that stuff because it's contaminated with BMAA, which can cause Parkinson's disease because we filter in nanoplastic particles. So if we're telling people to stay away from the high zinc and high DHA foods, then we have to give them little supplements to get ideal levels of those for optimal health. So even though we could do it all without supplements, by eating a little bit of more seafood or bivalves to get to get those nutrients that we want us to get. We're not doing that way. We're cleaner to add a algae-based supplement for DHA and EPA. It's cleaner not to rely on seafood for those nutrients. So I'm not, because of the filtering and dumping of agricultural waste, garbage and agricultural runoff into the oceans and lakes, causing algae overgrowth. Now we have, even on the continental shelf, now we have incredible amount of toxins that have filtered to the bottom that are penetrated crabs, lobsters, which are called shellfish, and bivalves, which are scallops, mussels, oysters, and mussels, clams, oysters, and scallops, those four things, which we're telling people to avoid eating. The point I'm making is that yes, we supplement conservatively. Those are the basic six that people should take, right? And then there's some extra things that people could take to help fight cancer, like we talked about, like curcumin and EGCG from green tea and mushroom extracts and certain berry. So there's certain things people could take. So we supplement conservatively and intelligently. I'm not saying all supplements are bad. We're just saying get most of what you need from food and then just supplement a little specifically and not overdo the supplements. And also keep in mind, I always talking about supplements because the main reason I probably have my own line of supplements is to avoid people taking folic acid, vitamin A, beta carotene, these synthetic ingredients that raise risk of cancer that are in supplemental ingredients. So it's very important not to take like a fortified soy milk with folic acid in it or a fortified nutritional yeast with folic acid added. This is synthetic supplemental ingredients, or take a supplement that has folic acid added to it or vitamin A added to it, because those things can increase cancer risk. So even though I'm recommending supplements, I'm also making sure people understand, don't just supplement indiscriminately because you can be taking stuff that could hurt you.
And I think it's cool. Not everyone has this exposure to you, but I get to watch you, when a new trendy ingredient comes up, like creatine or something, you do the research. So you are looking it up. You're saying, what did the study say? What should I, so you are forming an opinion on hydrogen, water, on all these things that are coming out. You look at them.
Right. And some of these things are good or useful, but it still doesn't take the place of eating healthfully. It can't.
Yeah. That's where you have to start, is eating the right foods, building the right habits, and then supplements for extra zhuzh.
Extra what?
Zhuzh.
Jush, what does that mean?
It's like, an extra like antioxidant topper, flavonoids, like extra
Could you spell that word dush?
zhuzh.
Dush.
I don't think I made it up.
Oh, I don't ever heard of that word before.
Okay.
It's like
Well,
tush. Like,
no, not trying to say tush.
okay.
So let's move on to protein, because there's a lot of talk. We talk about carnivore diet all the time on the podcast, and we've talked about that a lot. So don't need to get back into all of that. But I do see a lot of stuff on social media that people are kind of obsessed with, like counting the grams of protein. And so, like how I ate 60 grams of protein. I need 20 grams in breakfast. I need a lot of protein. And they're also saying the gram of protein per kilogram body weight is popular. So can you tell us a little bit about why people are so obsessed with protein and if we should be as well?
Let's start it out by saying one thing that people have to leave this conversation with, and that is, as you increase more animal protein in the diet, and most of this concern with protein has to do with modulating animal protein. And the point is that we have more than 20 studies that are long-term, large-scale studies that all corroborate each other, that as you tweak animal protein up, you get shorter lifespans and increased risk of both cancer death and cardiovascular death, all-cause mortality. That animal protein is the element that perhaps most correlates with shorter lifespan. So first of all, we should be watching protein, and the main watch should be not to consume too much, or not to consume any, if possible. That's for the longest lifespan are people who get their protein from plants, not from animal products. Now, once you agree that the evidence is overwhelmingly corroborative and undeniable that more animal protein leads to shorter lifespan, then the question is, how do you get enough eating plants? Right? So then the question is, yes, plant protein doesn't have the dangers that animal protein does. Matter of fact, these same studies show that more plant protein led to longer lifespan. So now the question is what foods are the best sources of plant protein, and how do we get enough protein from plants? I hope that should be the smart question, because people on carnivore and keto diets eating animal products are now demonstrated in long-term studies to be shortening their lifespans and causing long-term negative outcomes, which we've talked about a million times. And the question is, a plant-based diet give you enough protein? And the answer is yes, it gives you about a gram of protein per kilogram body weight. That's true. It gives you about, authorities recommend usually zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. 0.8 was a little less than 1 gram. But as we get older and our ability to buy it to break down protein and digest protein goes down, then we go to usually a gram per kilogram body weight as we get older, over the age of 80. You know what I mean? So yes, yes, we're getting about 35 to 40 grams of protein per 1,000 calories. And a nutritarian diet focuses on those things people do wrong, where they extract the protein from their diet. And the main thing people do wrong by taking the protein out of their diet that they need is by putting oil on their food. Because we're saying that nuts and seeds is a better fat source that goes into your bloodstream slowly without a caloric rush that doesn't trigger the brain to eat more food. And it's not as fattening. But nuts and seeds are a mixture of fat and protein, where you took the oil from the walnut or the oil from the flaxseed or the oil from the hemp seed or the oil from you would get just the fat without the protein. So if we took in, so the average American is consuming 500 calories from oil a day, that's 500 fat calories with no protein. If we took those saved 500 calories from nuts and seeds in place, or from beans or from anything in place of the oil, we would have just consumed 15 grams of protein with that amount of calories. So yes, so we're not going to get our 30 to 40 grams of protein per 1,000 calories anymore because I put oil on my food and my calories are coming from oil or from sugar or from, so yes, or from, so we're talking here about 5 types of plant foods: fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts and seeds, and intact whole grains. Not white flour, which loses protein, or sugar, which loses protein, but actually the whole grain that is intact has protein. But in any case, the highest protein plant foods are green vegetables, beans, including all types of beans, but including soybeans, and nuts and seeds. So when you eat sufficiently so we're telling people, yes, eat some beans every day. Yes, eat some soybeans. Eat some eat green vegetables. Yes, eat hemp seeds, eat chicks, eat sesame seeds, eat these high protein foods. And we're finding that so a nutritarian diet that we're recommending people eat is relatively high protein among plant-based diets. It gives people like 16 to 18% protein. It's pretty high in protein. Whereas they've analyzed other plant-based diets that give people like 9 to 8 to 12% protein because they're not eating their beans and their nuts and things like that. So yeah, I think the reason why these studies show more plant protein leads for longer life is because the foods that are highest in plant protein, beans, nuts and seeds, and green vegetables, are also the foods that contain the most anti-cancer phytochemicals and longevity protectors. So we're eating foods that are high in protein that contain longevity protectors. Let's look at the soybean for a minute, because tryptophan is converted into chiranine that promotes cancer and cancer replication, cell replication, invasiveness of cancer. It makes cancer cells spread. And the tryptophan and the methionine in animal products push the cancer spread. But soybeans contain tryptophan, but because they are low in methionine, and also because they have the factors that block the flavonoids that block the conversion of tryptophan into thionurinine, then they don't have the same effects on helping, and they block estrogen receptors, so they don't have the same effects to promote cancer as the animal proteins do. So there's still different biological effects between high animal protein and high plant proteins that have different effects of promoting aging and growth and cancer. That's why we'd rather people, if they want more protein, have some hemp seeds, some soybeans, some black kidney beans. Some have broccoli and have, hemp seeds and Mediterranean pine nuts, but don't do the animal products to get more protein. So the answer is yes. I watch protein. We watch not getting too much, and we get our protein from plants. And then that's the formula for a longer lifespan.
When you say not getting too much, I know a lot of people on the internet want to be big, really, really, really strong. And so what would you say to them, for those people that say, I gained so much more muscle, I feel more energetic? I feel like there are vegan people, like a vegan portion that kind of moved over to low carb, high protein. And what's the danger in that?
Right, exactly. Because let's look at this for a minute, because all these athletes who have improved their careers and extended their performance life, we're talking about Novak Djokovic, one of the best tennis players that ever lived, who wasn't that great when he was 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. When he switched over to a nutritarian diet, then he got much better stamina and performance. So in the third set, instead of being the top 10 in the world, now he's in the top 2 or 3 in the world, or the top 1 in the world, because now he's got that stamina to have the breathing, the focus, the concentration when you're tired into the events. And aging slower so they can still stay competing. Now he's competing, he's like 38 years old, still competing. We're talking about Tom Brady and Venus Williams, who got her health back through eating this way. And we're talking about people who are basketball players, tennis players, world-class skiers, and and quarterbacks, but not linebackers. Because eating this diet, you're not gonna get Tom Brady is not gonna get huge on this diet. He'll prolong his career. He'll still fit. He'll be concentrating. He'll have great. I can and me being 71 years old, I could do like 70 push-ups, let's say, right? And but I can bench press maybe. I weigh 145 pounds. I used to maybe be able to bench press 160 pounds. Now I could bench press like 140 pounds. I could bench press my body weight, right? So without hurting myself, of course. Now I worked out with weights and was an athlete most of my life, and I still didn't top out more than like 152, 153 pounds. My strength is limited from my diet because my diet was plant foods that limited how big I could get. I'm going to be the best skater. I'm going to jump high. I'm going to run fast. I'm going to be a great runner. Eric Schlappi, a world-class professional skier in 4 Olympic Games. That means 16 years he was at the top of his game in the United States ski team as downhill skiing. You know what I mean? Because he carried his blender, he ate his greens, he had a healthy diet. But he's not going to be a linebacker on a football team. I'm not going to be a power lifter. My strength and my size is limited by my diet because I'm not overdoing animal protein, which acts like a growth promoter, which pushing up like steroids, because IGF-1 and growth hormones are like growth promoters that can promote excessive growth. So yes, we can be the best athletes in sports that don't require excessive growth. But the minute you're a power lifter or a bodybuilder or a linebacker on a football team who needs to get over 200 pounds to be effective at your sport, or 250 pounds, you're going to have a hard time doing it on a plant-based diet unless you use protein supplements like isolated soy protein. You're better off doing you're better off with animal products if you want to get unnaturally large. So they're right. They can get a little larger and a little stronger and a little bigger. I'm strong for my body weight. I can do my 10 pull-ups. You know what I mean? I'm strong for my size, but I'm not going to. You saw me in the gym the other day doing crunches when I pulled my legs up over my head, right? From my hang. I'm strong for my size, but I could get bigger and stronger if I ate animal products, but that would shorten my lifespan. So getting unnaturally large from animal products is going to shorten a person's lifespan. And if people want to do that, live a shorter life and get cancer and get unnaturally large, I guess they could choose that, But so in any case, the linebackers on football teams, the NOSH study showed that linebackers on football teams who ate the diet to get extra big for their sport had the shortest lifespan of any occupation in North America. Did you guys hear that? That these people that we now know that the shortest lifespans, and the same thing these other studies show that people on the keto diets have the most early life deaths because they're eating more animal protein. So even if you could get a little bigger and stronger by eating more animal protein, it's not worth shortening your lifespan over it, in my opinion. Some people may feel they want to do that, and that's their choice. I have nothing against people who want to shorten their lifespan and get a little bigger, get excessively large. But Kyrie Irving, and we're talking here about all these top basketball players that are doing things to extend their prevent aging and have it enhance their career, and they're not worried about getting excessively large. We can get big and strong enough eating a plant-based diet.
Oh, someone in the chat wants you to know that the linemen are the ones who live the shortest.
What did I say?
Linebackers.
Oh, linemen, yes.
Yeah. On that football.
Yeah, and you know what the study showed, the NOSH study showed? It showed the quarterbacks and the ends and the receivers that ran up and down the side of the field did not have shorter lifespans. It was only the guys at the line that were extra large that had the shorter lifespan. You know what I mean? So if you're a slim quarterback running around and you're sprinting out to get the ball that they toss you with then you're going to keep leaner. But if the guys are the ones with the bigger bellies and the bigger, the ones that really eat to get large, those are the ones who have the shorter lifespans. Yeah. That's true.
Everyone wants their kid to be a quarterback now. Now
What's
that you've,
that?
everyone's going to want their kid to be a quarterback now that you've said it.
Oh, but boxers too, and by the way, playing tennis is great for your long-term health. It's great for your mental and physical health because the idea of stopping and changing directions to having to think while you're coordinating your body while you're thinking at the same time is great for your health, both mentally and physically. So I'm an avid tennis player, because you have to move and stop and move back the other direction. You have to think ahead. You got to, so it's really great for you to do these things. And so we're talking about boxing and martial arts and tennis and these things that require quick movements and speed and agility and thought is great for your health. And you don't need to, and you're not going to be better at that for eating animal products. You're going to be better at that with better stamina. Because I box and I fight, right? And I fight with my son Sean. So we're fine. I fought with you. I taught you how to box too, right?
Right.
So we're fighting, and I'm fighting Sean, and he's like 17 years old, right? And now, so I'm fighting him, and it's hard to get him and hit, even though we're wearing protective gear, but it's hard to get him because when you're not tired and you can move your body real fast, it's hard. You can't, he can't hit me. But then once we're boxing for a while and he starts to tire out, and I have better stamina, then I can get some good punches in because he's slower. He can't move as fast. And it's the same thing with any sport. You slow down, the decisions you make, you're not as quick, you make mistakes when you get tired. And that's how I could beat him eventually because I could keep moving faster and not tire out. And he got tired. So like to the boxers, it's great to eat this way. But so in any case, like, people are getting the idea that you can be a great athlete, but you're not going to get overly large. It's going to shorten your lifespan.
Yeah, and someone wrote in the chat, which I found fascinating too, is that the average lineman weighs 300 pounds.
Really, yeah, that's really crazy, right? And you're not going to get that big eating salad and vegetable bean soup to get that large. That's the point. And they're right. You can get bigger with animal products.
Yeah, I just like to point out that it's effortless to be your ideal weight if you eat the right stuff. You choose the right foods, you really don't have to try. Your body wants to just be the weight that you can.
Right. I want people to be lean and muscular, but not huge and muscular, right? We want people to have low body fat and be strong for their size. That's why we're measuring strength by pull-ups and push-ups and not by, just by being bigger and lifting more weight. It's being, you want to show agility from moving side to side, and stamina is the signs of good health. Balance, right? Coordination, agility, stamina, not just size and strength.
Prioritizing health over looks.
Emphasizing health, right, over just having big muscles.
Yes, 100%. So
Of course, it's time that I could show my big muscle. So I'm
what
on.
you're trying to do right now?
What's that?
Is that what you're trying to do right now? All right.
Yeah, I mean, you said.
For it. Nice. Yeah. I'm always very proud that you're 71. One? That's right?
71. Yeah.
Yeah, 71.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Why? You don't like
And I
it?
look, what's that?
You don't like it? I feel like you do everything that you've done your whole life. So what's the difference, really?
What's the difference? No real difference. You just, when you get hurt, you take longer to heal. I heal so fast. If I got hurt myself the next day, I felt better. Now I takes a couple.
I know when we get comments though that you're too frail, you're too thin, I always just laugh or I'm like, what are you talking about? Because you are so active, so agile, you do everything. You're like a superhuman. So it's funny. But I do want to ask about protein powders because we had so many people write in about protein powders. And I actually have friends text me all the time. Hey, is this protein powder okay? They'll send me images and I would just like to say there's so many different ingredients in protein powders. So do you take one? Do you think it's really important that people take one as they age? How do they utilize them on a vegetarian diet?
I don't know. Mostly there are some problems with protein powders, particularly whey protein and animal protein powders for the same reason we talked about that. But isolated soy protein is such a concentrated protein that pushes IGF-1 high like an animal product could. And I don't recommend the isolated soy protein. I would eat soybeans, eat hemp seeds. And if you're eating extra soy or tofu or hemp seeds, Mediterranean pine nuts to get more protein, that's good enough. But some people, they can't eat all that food and they have a little protein powder. We recommend that protein powder maybe comes from pea protein and pumpkin seed protein, but not from rice protein, not from soy protein, not from animal protein, because the rice proteins have too much arsenic, and the soy proteins are too high in protein. They're better off eating the zinc. So the answer is, as we get older, like past the age of 75, if you find that your IGF-1, that you're getting frail, losing strength, and you can't modulate your diet appropriately with the beans and the nuts to get enough protein for you, and you still, then a little extra plant protein supplement would be indicated. But in most cases, the people don't even need it. But of course, some people like it, using a little bit, gives them a little feel that they're maintaining their strength and size, getting extra protein, having to eat so much food, and so it can be utilized. But I do recommend they take care of what protein powder they use.
But more is not always better too. I know people really strive to have the 20 grams of protein. Ours has, I think, like 10 per serving.
You don't want to get, yeah, because you want to get your protein from food. We want people to eat the broccoli and eat this because you get benefits from eating the real food and not just the powder, not just the powders, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And also look at the ingredients in our protein powder because it has all the seeds that you want. It has extra flax, chia, pumpkin seeds, these good seeds that if you ate the
Yeah,
real
ours
seeds.
is a much more natural one, but I'm just,
Yeah.
whatever people are using, but still, they can make the diet get a good amount of protein if they plan the diet properly.
And you got to make sure you're reading those ingredients because if sugar is the second ingredient, if whey protein is, if isolated soy protein, these are all not natural foods.
Right,
Get
right,
reading the ingredients.
right.
Important.
And for an athlete, a professional. So yeah, for a person who really wants to get big and doesn't want to eat animal products, they can do all the things we're talking about: the extra soybean, the extra tofu, the hemp seeds, the pine nuts, and take a little extra the protein powder, and they can do it without going to animal products try to get extra size, extra growth promotion.
True that any deficiencies like B12 deficiencies or iron deficiencies can make people tired or not feel the best?
Of course they could. They can cause anemia. Both B12 and iron deficiency can cause hemoglobin to drop and make people can become deficient. And some women, first of all, people on plant-based diets need more B12, but some women, because they're bleeding or just don't absorb iron as well, do need to take iron supplements. I don't recommend iron supplements unless you need them, but the blood test to measure whether iron is the source of your fatigue is called ferritin, because taking an iron test in your blood is not accurate. The iron binding, the iron, the serum iron, or the most accurate test is ferritin, Ferritin. Ferritin is the most accurate blood test to see what your iron stores are if you need to take some extra iron. So I do have people I advise to take iron. I even have some people who I know, some people who are who unusually can't absorb iron well, and they actually need to take some heme iron, some animal sourced iron to get their iron up. So there's some rare individuals who need that.
Well, thanks for answering that. I have to myth bust this breakfast. It was trending all over TikTok and social media. It's called the Balkan breakfast. And it's set up like a charcuterie board. It is vegetables, sourdough bread, cured meats, cheese, raw vegetables, I should point that out, and with a little bit of salt sprinkled. And they're saying starting your day with vegetables, meat, and cheese, and eggs is great. A lot of foundational medicine practitioners and nutritional therapists are saying the protein and fiber content contributes to satiety. So it helps shave off that it helps create mid-morning energy and keeps you satisfied until lunch. So they're saying it's making you satisfied and satiated.
I'm not supposed to curse, but who gives a blank? So it keeps you satiated, but if you die 10 years younger, who cares?
But so what people do, and I think that's really sneaky, is they'll put in vegetables or some high fiber food mixed in with a lot of crap.
They'll put in some onions. The onions are good for you. The vegetables are good for you. And then the protein keeps you satiated till lunch.
But because they're getting a bit of those raw vegetables, but you're having also all the bad stuff with it, it might be better than that previously 100% bad thing without any vegetables. So it's the better option, but it's not the best option.
Yeah, cured meat that cause cancer. The World Health Organization determines as a class 1 carcinogen is processed meats and red meats, which increases colorectal cancer and all, it's just, it's not, the people who give nutritional advice on the internet are nonsensical, people which should be shut down because they're hurting people. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
That's not the protein and fiber that you want. A little bit of raw vegetables with cured meats. You don't want protein from the meats that are also cured and have so many.
If you wanted some protein in your breakfast, which I do, I get a lot of protein in my breakfast. I took my oat groats or my wheat groats, the whole wheat berries. I put some wheat germ, which is really high in protein, and some hemp seeds and some flax seeds and some chia seeds. I put a tablespoon or two of wheat germ. I took my 2 tablespoons of ground seeds, which are really high in protein, right? And I mixed a little black lentils in with and I got a really with my soy milk on top, and berries, of course, and something like, to have my breakfast. I had a really high protein breakfast. I put the black lentils in with the oat groats or the wheat groats, gave me incredible high protein content there. Which then you don't want to, you're not eating animal products to keep satiated the rest of the day. You don't need to be, see, the whole problem is that people need to eat animal products when they're toxic because the animal products take so long to digest that they keep the digestive system, the liver going, digesting food for like 4 or 5 hours. When you're healthy, you can finish your digestion in an hour or two, and you're not going to get fatigued because you can live off the glycogen you stored in the meal. But these people on animal product diets, because they have so much nitrogenous waste, so much urea, and and other uric acid, and so much extra nitrogenous waste, they don't tolerate when their body's not in a digestive cycle because they feel so wiped out and fatigued when the body is in a detox cycle when they're not digesting. While the body's digesting, it can't detox. So you can't feel fatigue from the detox. They have to keep their satiate, keep their energy up by keeping the food digesting all day. And they're just aging themselves, keeping their body way too busy. And us nutritarians don't feel wiped out. We don't feel fatigued when we're not digesting all the time because our body's not toxic. So it's a completely different mentality. And let's talk about the 2 extra things they said, sourdough bread, and what else did you say besides sourdough bread? Salt or whatever. Sourdough bread, it has a little fermentation, but sourdough bread can be made from white bread, or it could be made from an intact whole grain, either one. And 90% of them are made from white bread. If you ferment white bread, it's still going to be white bread. It's still going to be sugar in your body. It's still not going to be good. If you make sourdough bread an intact whole grain, if you buy a whole wheat berry or an oat groat or a kamut and you grind it and you make a fresh berry or sprouted grain, that's why I buy the Ezekiel breads, the Food for Life Ezekiel breads, because they're sprouted grains that are not ground into a fine flour and they're not made of white, they're made of a whole food, right? So it's not a question of whether it's sourdough or not. Sure, you could have a little fermentation instead of using baking powder. That would be great, but only if it's an intact whole grain or a sprouted whole grain makes it good, not sourdough. That's the point that makes it good. It's still white bread. And whether they add sugar or salt to it, of course, and salt, as we know, ages our interior lining of blood vessels and increases our risk of hemorrhagic stroke in proportion to the utilization of salt. And there's no such thing as a healthy salt. So the Celtic salt, the Himalayan salt, the salt from the Rock of Gibraltar, the bottom of the Mariana Trench, or the back of the moon, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's all 2,300 milligrams of sodium per teaspoon. And when you eat extra sodium, you're aging your body prematurely. You're aging your body and you're increasing risk of stroke. Not only because it raises our blood pressure, but also because it weakens the interior lining of blood vessels, increasing the propensity to split. And chronic salt eating makes us become electrolyte deficient and magnesium deficient and potassium deficient. Let me say that again. That when you take in extra salt, the body has to urinate out extra salt and has to sweat out extra salt. The more you take in, the more you have to remove because the bloodstream has to stay between 135 and 140. It has to be in that narrow range of homeodynamic level of the sodium has to always stay flat in the same level in the blood. So you eat less sodium, you don't lose it in your sweat. The sweat's just water. And the urine doesn't sweat, doesn't pee. When you eat a high salt diet, you have a lot of salt in your sweat and your urine. And the body can't uniquely only remove the extra sodium chloride. It has to take other minerals with it. So you're losing magnesium and potassium and phosphorus and bicarbonate. You're losing other things in your sweat to get rid of the extra salt. And those people are chronically mineral deficient, getting a cramp in their leg if they're exercising or sweating, having to take electrolyte drinks because the diet is so high in salt, they're losing electrolytes all the time. And when they sweat and do some exercise outside, they're going to lose more electrolytes. And us, we're not. We're just going to lose water in our sweat. Our sweat is just water. And we can replenish this by drinking some water. We don't have to take an electrolyte drink because we're not on a high salt diet.
I swear it makes you smell better. Your sweat doesn't smell that bad, which is nice. And that salt from the back of the moon sounds really expensive. So it's
Yes.
good that,
Okay.
yeah. So I just wanted to point out that when you're looking at any trend, quick fixes usually are not it. They do not work. I don't know a time that a quick fix has ever been the answer. It's habits, lifestyle, and diet changes. So I just think that's really important. When we're talking about the healthiest breakfast, I just had to point out that this article, which Vogue is promoting and about the healthiest breakfast, talked about cured meats and that the doctor says they do cause risk of cancer and they're carcinogenic. So just eat them in moderation because they are really tasty and I love them. I do really love that you don't promote foods because they just taste good. Like you would never say, just keep smoking cigarettes because it makes you look cool. But there are certain people that want to, and that's fine. But you would not bend to that and tell people, but you can do that in moderation, which I really admire.
Moderation is whatever level that you want to consume something that's going to kill, that's going to hurt you. In other words, if you feel it's level good for you, it doesn't matter. It's still going to hurt you. But and moderation is the person that how much they want. I drink alcohol in moderation. Well, moderate drinking of alcohol still increases your risk of breast cancer by 20%. I mean, we're still, you don't escape from the cause of biological laws of cause and effect. You can't, if you're smoking cigarettes in moderation, or eating cured meats in moderation, or eating bacon in moderation, and also all these things you do in moderation cumulatively add up. The one thing you do wrong in moderation adds up with the other thing you do wrong in moderation, with the other thing you do wrong in moderation. And all of a sudden, it's not moderation. You're still going to get, you're still going to probably get cancer because cancer affects cancer. What I'm saying is people over the age of 60, more than half of them have cancer cells in their body. Now, they may die of a heart attack before the cancer kills them, and heart attacks and strokes are still the number one cause of adult deaths. But these things don't have to happen. And we have this unprecedented opportunity in human history to take nutritional science and not get cancer, and not have a heart attack, and not get a stroke, and not get demented when we get older. And why not use the science that has advanced so much in the last decade to make a dietary portfolio that enables you to live a long, healthy life without having these tragedies happen to you? And that's, of course, what we're all about.
And you have the power to pick these foods and make these choices for yourself. So I love the information presented today. I think that was a really fun conversation. And there's so many different ways for them to work with you too, right, Dad? You mentioned the Ask the Doctor forum, which you answer questions every single day. This detox event that we're starting in just a couple weeks, where we are all doing this together. And if you enjoyed just hearing me and my dad talk about health, Eat to Live podcast, which is jam-packed with amazing information. So a lot of different ways to interact.
If they're really food addicts, they could come and stay with us at our retreat also and spend some time. And if they really need that, we have that available for them too as well.
Even for people who just want to make their lifestyle healthier. And if you're saying, can Dr. Fuhrman help me with blank disease, blank health problem? The answer is always yes, and it's not too late. So if you have not adopted a healthy diet or nutritarian diet yet, this is your moment. This is your year, and we are rooting for you, right?
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. And
Good luck, everybody. Take
the
care.
recording sent out and the transcript. So I hope you all enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dad.